1. So this story needs a little bit of backstory. I am 21, female, and at the time of this story I was 19 and had just started a new job at a Greek restaurant in my town. I had also just found out I was 6 weeks pregnant and still in the process of comprehending this, but ended up losing the pregnancy about 2 weeks after the incident. So needless to say, I was a freaking wreck emotionally already. Okay, enough backstory. This new job meant basically waiting tables for about 6 to 10 hours a day, and for anyone who has ever experienced morning sickness knows that it is not just strike in the morning. So I was pretty nauseated most of the day and exhausted, which meant I wasn't exactly the most alert. I was incredibly tired all the time, but I tried my best to still appear alert and focused. I woke up bright and early and put on a long-sleeve button-down, black slacks, and non-slip shoes. On my first day at this new job, I was immediately walked through and introduced to all the other employees. One person in particular stood out immediately. He was probably in his mid-40s to early 50s, overweight, dark, unkempt hair, and beard and glasses, and no smile. He stared like he was trying to direct me with his eyes and seemed to be analyzing every part of me. To this day, it's still something that can send a chill down my spine. I think it is also worth mentioning that because I look younger than I am when I'm not wearing makeup, I was continually being asked what high school I went to. Most of them assumed I was 16 years old, and I had never been formally introduced to this guy or even learned his name, so as far as he knew, I was 16 years old. I didn't see the point in correcting them since I was pretty used to being mistaken for younger when my arms are covered. Throughout my entire shift, I could feel eyes on me no matter where I went in the restaurant. And over time I would turn to the kitchen and see his cold, unmoving, deadpan expression locked onto me like a heat-seeking missile. For the most part of the first day, this is all he did. Aside from that, he left me alone, but for me it was already enough to put me on edge. I would also catch moments where he and my manager would be speaking with one another, look over at me, and then speak again. At first I thought, okay, this is just the hormones, I'm being crazy. Then, towards the end of my shift, I let my manager know I would need to leave early at closing, because I need to walk to my bus stop, and if I miss that bus, I'm kind of SOL. Until the next one comes at a little before midnight. He agrees and says it will not be a problem. He also mentions that I am dressed so formally, and casual is best. So the next day, I decided to just wear the same thing I saw my other female coworker wear, and I come in for my shift. I am wearing an all-black short-sleeve t-shirt, black yoga pants, non-slips, and my apron. I also happen to have multiple tattoos, most of which are on my wrists, forearms, and inner arms. Not a full sleeve, but pretty visible. To most of the co-workers, this was enough to show them that I was in fact over 18. But it also made me more interesting of an object to leer at during my shift for him. As I was restocking some of the sauces we put on the table, he approached me and stared down at me intently. I looked up, startled to see him so close to me, and just said, "Yes?" He just stared at me for a few seconds and said, "Want coffee from me?" We had a machine we used to make various coffee drinks that we kept in the back, so I assumed this is what he meant and said, okay, sure, thanks, I appreciate that." He seemed really content and just walked away without another word. He never actually brings me any coffee, and I think this is kind of weird, but just go back to doing my job. A few hours later, and it's finally time I can take my lunch break, so I quickly place my to-go order and run to the bathroom to change into a sweater. When I come back from changing, my food is ready, and he hands me the food, and I notice there is a piece of paper on top, and that he is smirking at me, then looking to my manager with a smile. I realize later that the piece of paper is his phone number. When I come back from my lunch, I am asked by my manager to go into the storage unit behind the restaurant and grab cases of soda to restock the fridge. I agree and head back. This storage unit was basically a metal shipping carrier that was in the parking lot behind the restaurant. There was one big, heavy metal door to get in, and no light on the inside. While I was in there, I had my back turned to the metal door, while I knelt down, looking for all the cases of soda on the shelves. "Hey!" My heart nearly stops, and I let out a sharp squeak of terror and quickly turn around to see him. I chuckle half-heartedly and try to make it seem like I wasn't on the verge of passing out, and just quickly ask, "Am I in your way?" Silence. I slowly stand up and brace my back against the wall of the shipping container, slowly realizing that I may not be in the safest position right now. "You never texted me," He slowly starts to move toward me, and I half-cry shout, "I have a boyfriend!" Dead silence again. He simply slams his fist into the shipping carrier door and walks out without a word. His shift ended 1 hour later, mine was set to end in another 5 hours. He seemed to have left, and I got through the rest of my shift almost completely without incident. I notice a car in the parking lot of the restaurant going out through the entrance and think, how stupid, why would they go that way? The car goes toward the intersection and U-turns to be driving the same way I'm walking. At this point, it is about 10:30 p.m. I had just finished closing up and began walking towards my bus stop, only about a mile away at the train station. As I am walking, I stay on the phone with my godmother and walk along to the train station. As I reach my stop, I realize that there is a car that keeps circling. I had noticed it while I was walking from my job, but thought it must be because I was on a straight road for so long. So when I notice the lift badge on it, I assume it's just someone looking for their passenger. I know that it can be dangerous waiting at night by myself. Since the trains had already stopped running that night, and I had another 30 or so minutes before my bus would arrive, I keep pepper spray and a small switchblade as well as a whistle in my backpack for this exact reason. I place my backpack down next to me on the bench and pop in one of my earbuds so I can have my playlist queued up and ready to go when the bus arrives. 15 more minutes go by, and I see the car circle again. Another 10 minutes, and it pulls up directly in front of me. I take out my earbud to preemptively say, "I'm not your passenger, sorry." The window on the car rolls down and I see him. "Get in," he demands quickly. I'm dumbfounded and freeze. "No thank you, my bus will be here soon." He smiles eerily. "Don't you see who it is? You know me, get in." I tense up. "No, I really don't want to, please leave me alone." My voice is shaking and breaking on every word. I reach slowly for my backpack and freeze. "Get in the fucking car!" I feel my entire body lock up, and I want to scream, but nothing comes out. I hear his door unlock, and I start to panic, thinking this is going to end very badly for me. My bus pulls in, and I see the driver door of his car slam shut, and he peels off down the road in a hurry. I run onto the bus, and quickly take the closest seat to the driver I possibly could. As soon as I get through the door of my room and see my boyfriend, I burst into tears and sob. I was shaking the entire bus ride with the realization that he had followed me in his car for a mile to the bus stop, and then circled and waited until I was completely alone. I felt so ashamed that I had all the tools I believed I needed to keep myself safe, and I had froze. I went to the police the next day and was told that even though they agreed it was extremely concerning, and he could escalate further, that they couldn't do anything until he flat out stated he intends to hurt me, or stalk me for at least 48 hours. I was completely devastated, but also determined to stay away from him in that place. I quit over text the next day because I was not about to go in person. So, let's not meet again. For those wondering if the manager was in on it in some way, I and the police officers who spoke with me when I tried to report the incident agree, and believe that may be why I was never formally introduced to the creepy dude, so I wouldn't be able to report him by name. And also why he was completely unfazed by a panicked text message at 6 a.m., with his employee quitting after only 2 shifts. 2. One night late, about 1:30 a.m., I had left my boyfriend's house after a night of watching TV. My boyfriend lived in Birmingham, and I lived in a neighboring area about 20 miles away, so I had to go on the motorway home. Always a lonely drive late at night, and I'm not a confident driver, so it wasn't something that I looked forward to. I had done this drive 3 times a week for at least a year, so it wasn't unusual for me, though. I'd crank up the late-night talk show on the radio, and the entire time would pass quickly and uneventfully, especially at that time of night when the roads were virtually empty. I pulled out of my boyfriend's estate, and yes, I admit it. I mistimed the turn and accidentally cut a black Porsche up with tinted windows who was traveling about 50 miles per hour. The Porsche had to brake and get into the next lane quick to avoid a collision. I remember shouting "shit," as I knew it was my fault, and hoped the driver wouldn't make an issue of it. I was wrong. We were in adjacent lanes waiting for the lights to change, and suddenly his interior light came on. In the car was a young Asian male, aged about 25 years old. It immediately struck me that this guy was expensive looking. He was head to toe in designer gear, and had a gold watch that glinted in the car light. He had a woman sitting next to him in the passenger seat who I assumed to be his girlfriend or perhaps sister. She was also Asian, but her presentation was what alarmed me. She was also immaculately dressed, but had the most frightened look on her face I've ever seen. She was cringing. Her chin was virtually in her chest, and she was shaking. She looked up for a split second, and we stared at each other. I got the strong message from her that something bad was just about to happen to me. Because she's seen it before somehow and knows what's coming. There was absolutely no misunderstanding in her look. The guy then jumped out of his car. I immediately locked my door. He saw me and didn't care. He advanced rapidly around his car, and what really disturbed me was he was rolling his right-hand shirt sleeve up and staring at me with the most menacing expression I had ever seen. In that instant, I knew this was about to go further than just him ranting about me being a crap driver. I knew he was going to hurt me for real. I slammed the car into reverse, thank God no other cars were on the carriageway, and shot backwards just before he reached the front of my car. I shot back about 50 foot at 20 miles per hour, turned the wheel and raced past him onto the dual carriageway, and away I went. I was absolutely petrified, but was praying that was the end of it. I'd gotten away, and by the look on my face he must have known he actually scared me. Again, I was wrong. To my utter horror, I glanced into the rearview mirror, and he was in his black sports car, racing up the carriageway to catch up with me. My little car had no chance against his, and he was gaining with every second. To make matters worse, the carriageway was about 5 miles long in a straight run towards the motorway I needed to get on. At regular intervals, there were strictly enforced speed cameras and traffic lights to slow down the flow. In one way, this saved me, though. Both of us always slowed down to 60 miles per hour as we passed through each camera. The guy must have been local. As I was ahead, I always got back a precious few seconds, as he had to slow down as he went by. By now, we were close to the motorway, and I was all over the place mentally. I was shaking and sweating. I didn't know what to do. I thought about just pulling over and having it out with him. But that girl's face was so strong in my mind, my gut instinct told me that was the worst thing to do. Who the fuck was this guy, and why wouldn't he leave me alone? What was he going to do after making all this effort? I started to panic about getting onto the motorway, but there was even more of a lack of people than on the carriageway if he got hold of me somehow. We were approaching the final set of traffic lights before the motorway entrance. It was now or never. The road curved, so for a few seconds he lost sight of me. In that time, I slammed on my brakes to slow down my speed and turned off the carriageway onto a housing estate with a dead-end, car turnaround street. At about 1:45 a.m., every house was in darkness. The street lamps were a pale yellow, but didn't penetrate the dark very well. I literally drove down the cul-de-sac and pulled into some random person's house driveway and turned off my lights. I got down onto the floor by the pedals and hid. I was shaking and panicking, not wanting the house owner to wake up, but also hoping they might, as this was getting ridiculous and I was starting to wonder if the police shouldn't be informed. Nothing happened for about 30 seconds, and then suddenly, I saw 2 bright main beam lights circle the cul-de-sac slowly. I didn't lift my head up to check, but I knew it was him. Not one single car had I seen in 25 minutes, and now this. It had to be him. The light circled twice, slowly. I just sat and waited for the inevitable and was prepping to scream when he found me. But nothing happened. The street was dark again, and I was still waiting, whimpering by the pedals of my car. What seemed like years passed, but if it was 2 minutes, I'm being generous, before I scrambled out from under the steering wheel and back into my seat. I felt a bit better at this point, and kind of laughed anxiously to myself that these little ruses that I'd seen in movies sometimes worked. But seriously, I just wanted to get home and prayed that was it. I was wrong. I pulled back onto the carriageway and was pleased to see the road was empty again. I got back up to about 50 miles per hour and indicated out of habit to start to enter the entrance of the motorway, when lights were picked up in my rear-view mirror. At first I immediately discounted it. No way it could be him, no way. And as he gained on me, I saw the familiar shape of the Porsche. The blackened-out windows, the grille. He was back. Now at this point is where panic really began to set in. This wasn't a catch-me-if-you-can routine any longer. This was going to be significant if he got hold of me. No one takes that amount of time and trouble late at night to call someone a shit driver. No one. And then there was that girl's face. I hadn't read her wrong. These actions now proved to me that this has got to come to a head before it was over. I pulled onto the motorway, went into 5th gear, and the chase was on. I got in the fast lane and pushed my poor old car up to just under 100 miles per hour. The speed limit is 70 on that stretch, and I knew it. I prayed that the traffic police would see me on CCTV and send a car out, or someone would do something. Nothing happened. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember much of those 6 miles apart from being absolutely petrified. He stayed right behind me with his headlights right in my mirror as a reminder he was still right there. I kept trying to concentrate on the road ahead. As I was driving so fast, the journey seemed to speed by, the fields and pastures turned industrial, and I knew my exit was approaching. That's when it hit me. You're taking him to your house. What the fuck was I thinking? This guy has stalked me for about 14 miles and was showing no signs of stopping, and I was quite merrily showing him the way to my identity and life. I pulled off the motorway at the last possible second without indicating, hoping he would miss the exit and give up. Nope, he made it, lights shining, the lot. Now it was a rerun of what had happened on the carriageway, both of us speeding along, trying to slow down for the speed cameras. However, I had had enough at that point, and started not slowing down and shooting red lights. As soon as I shot my first red light, so did he. Again, I realized this guy was serious, and it wasn't going to stop until he felt he had got justice for me cutting him up. I was about 2 miles away from my house and still speeding along at this point, trying to think of something to do. Then I saw my local gas station looming up ahead of me. It's one of those 24-hour ones which are always manned. Most of the staff know me there, as I go pretty much every day, as there is a mini supermarket attached. I swerved onto the forecourt of the gas station without indicating again. I didn't even try to park my car or secure my valuables. I skidded to a halt right outside the main doors, threw open my car door, and ran inside shouting, "There's a man following me, can you call the police?" To my disbelief, the guy had also swung onto the forecourt. Why? And had jumped out of his car. I thought, here we go. I'm going to have to fight him in here now. And looked around for something to grab to use as a weapon. One of the assistants who knew me by face said, "Who's following you?" I screamed, "Him!" and pointed through the glass to the man starting to walk towards us with his sleeves rolled up. The cashier called the police immediately. She was standing in the window at her till, watching him as she did it. And he could see her. He abruptly turned on his heel and got back in his car. As the light illuminated the interior, I saw the girl in the passenger side one last time. Her head was in her hands and she was crouched over, as if in extreme anxiety or pain. I presumed it was anxiety at that point. No way was she part of what had happened. It must have been as frightening for her as it was for me. Naturally, the police didn't help much. It all seemed a bit far-fetched for them, I think. They said they would review the CCTV and get back to me, but I never heard anything. So crazy guy in your car in the carriageway in Birmingham. Let's not meet ever again. 3. I'll start off by giving you some background info. It was 2009. I was a roughly 18 or 19-year-old female, living in a trailer house out at the opening of a holler in Kentucky. Williamsburg, for those familiar. With my boyfriend Josh and our roommate Brent, who both worked in town at the local Mickey D's. I had just moved to town, so I didn't have a job yet. One night Josh and Brent both had to work the late shift and left me home alone. This wasn't unusual and had happened a few times before. The way our trailer was set up was that you walked up some steps to a porch where the front door was. Upon entering, it's a living room with a hallway to the right, where mine and Josh's room and a spare room was. Brent had the master bedroom to the left through the living room and kitchen area. There was a back door that was also in the kitchen next to the master bedroom door. There wasn't much in our living room except a TV, an Xbox, and a couple couches, with a bat laid next to the front door. Anyways, I was sitting on the couch nearest to the front door, which has 2 huge windows on both sides. The couch was directly in front of them. Watching TV as I usually did. I had no phone or any other way to contact the outside world. Several hours into me watching TV, around 12 a.m., I heard the front door knob jiggling like someone was trying to get in. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach, with no way to contact anyone and the nearest neighbor being across a huge field way out of earshot. I thought for sure I was dead. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kentucky, there's a stereotype of crazy hillbilly that supposedly wander around and live in said hollers. I figured this was just used to scare kids and rowdy teens, etc. Well, apparently I was wrong. I got up and grabbed the bat next to the couch I was sitting on to see if it was maybe my roommate or my boyfriend coming home from work early. But seeing as I hadn't heard a car arrive or any doors, this was highly unlikely anyways. When I looked through the peephole, whoever it was had covered it, so I couldn't see their face. I nearly pissed myself. I turned off all the lights and locked every window and door in the house, hoping he or she would go away if I ignored them. Dear God, was I wrong. The person proceeded to jiggle the front door handle some more. Some trailers have doors that open pretty easy if you mess with them enough. Till I guess they got frustrated and ran around the back door and started the same jiggling, trying to see into the window on the back door. This went on for a good 20 minutes of this person terrorizing me, running back and forth from door to door. Then they started to bang and shake all the windows as they ran around my house. At this point, I'm in a ball crying in the living room on the floor, with the bat praying that they wouldn't try to break down the old-ass doors. Eventually, after about 45 minutes of terrorizing me, I guess they gave up, and went back to wherever they came from. My boyfriend showed up about 15 minutes later, and I made him check the house outside. We never found anyone, but we did find some footprints in the mud that were smudged in the morning. So, Creepy Holler Hillbilly, whoever you may be, please, let's not ever meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 447. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. When's this video go up? Oh, Wednesday, okay. Time it's all relative and subjective. I mean, why do we put Wednesday in the middle of the week? Why not move it till later in the week? Too restricted by society's rules. Well, right, that's enough philosophizing. Happy to say, out of the 3 big projects I had to do, I have 2 completed. One... Hang on, when does this video go up? I don't know if I can say yet. It's not something that's going up on the channel, I just don't want to ruin... Yeah, alright, well, I'll maybe say later in the week. One was obviously Glitch Monthly for last week, you guys got that. The second was a private project for a subscriber, someone had asked me to do something. And the third one is the next Glitch Monthly, so I'm kind of clear of big projects to do that. Well, I need to do taxes at some point this week, but that's not too bad. You know, it's stressful doing it because you don't want to leave anything out. But yeah, that's the only other thing. But work-wise, it's just Glitch Monthly is the next one. Then once that's done, I'm then clear to see what I'm going to do to take my week off in December. So, lovely. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.